You can't seriously tell me you forgot the detergent again. I shoved a greasy lasagna pan into the bottom rack of the dishwasher. I didn't look at him. I watched lukewarm, gray water swirl around a few stray pieces of pasta in the sink. John L. Dunn leaned against the counter. He scrolled through his phone, his face glowing blue in the kitchen light. He didn't answer. He just shifted his weight, and the floorboards of our overpriced New Jersey Colonial creaked. We bought this house as an investment, thinking the zip code would climb faster than our debt. Instead, the mortgage felt like an anchor. The town hiked the property taxes again, and my student loan payments restarted this month. Our budget wasn't just tight, it was underwater. I felt a physical tightening in my chest every time I opened the bank app. I started sorting the laundry. I reached into the pocket of John's khakis and felt something stiff. I pulled out a crinkled receipt from the Azure Room. It's a high-end seafood spot 40 miles north. The total was $280. The bill listed vintage champagne and 2 entrees. I looked at the date. Last Tuesday. John, I said. I held up the paper. Why were you at the Azure Room on Tuesday? He looked up. He didn't take the receipt. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked toward the kitchen window. It was for Joshua, he said. He's in a bad way. I told you he needed help. Joshua G. Jackson treated financial crises like a hobby. He always needed loans, rides, or a place to crash. John loved being the reliable one, so he always stepped up. Since when does helping Joshua cost $200 in seafood? I asked. John looked back at his phone. He had a job lead, a big one. He wanted to celebrate. I didn't want to make it a thing. It sounded plausible, or it sounded like the kind of garbage John believed. I wanted to believe him because the alternative, that he spent money we didn't have on something random, felt too heavy to carry. I told myself I was being petty. We were both stressed. The following Thursday, we hit the DMV to renew the SUV registration. The waiting room smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Fluorescent lights hummed, making my teeth ache. While John stood in line, I sat on a plastic chair. My phone buzzed. Sarah, my sister-in-law, sent a text. I didn't reply. Sarah always sent these veiled concerns that were actually critiques. The whole family communicated in circles. They never said the direct thing. They just hovered around the edges of a problem. Number 42, the clerk shouted. John stepped up. I walked over and handed her the insurance paperwork. The clerk tapped a few keys on her computer. Everything looks fine, she said, but someone already processed the registration fee for the secondary vehicle through a corporate account. I frowned. Secondary vehicle? The clerk looked at us. The silver sedan registered to this address. Sterling Holdings paid it 3 weeks ago. I felt sick to my stomach. We didn't own a silver sedan. What is she talking about? I asked. John didn't look at me. He hunched his shoulders. That's for Joshua. He's using our address because his lease ended. I forgot to mention it. You used a corporate account for your cousin's car? It's a friend's company. Heather, just a favor, he said. He sounded rushed. Can we just finish the SUV? I have a call. We walked to the car into the humidity. The explanation fit the pattern. Joshua needing help, John playing savior, but the details felt blurry. That evening, I called my mother-in-law. I tried to sound casual. Hey, just checking in, I said, twisting the phone cord. John mentioned Joshua had car trouble. Is he moving back to the area? She paused. I heard her TV in the background. Oh, Joshua, she said. I think he was in Dallas for a few weeks. Or maybe San Antonio? He had a lease crisis. Or a job lead. John mentioned something a few months ago? Or maybe last year. Her half-memory left me more confused. The timeline didn't match the receipt or the DMV, but she sounded so dismissive that I wondered if I was imagining the gaps. I hung up and looked at the mail. The student loan notice sat on top. The grace period ended. The first payment was due in 3 days. I opened the laptop to check our joint savings. I typed in the password. The screen flashed red. Incorrect password. I tried again. Incorrect password. Staring at the screen, I watched the red text remain unchanged. I typed the password used for 5 years, the anniversary and the house number, only to see it fail again. John stood in the hallway, likely heading for the bathroom. Leaving the laptop open, I let the incorrect password message blink on the screen. He stopped, but he didn't turn around. He just stood there with his shoulders hunched, sighed, and checked his watch. Yeah? Did you change the password to the joint savings? Turning finally, he leaned one shoulder against the doorframe and looked at the wall behind me. I might have, he said. I think I updated the security settings last week. I forgot to tell you. Why? He shrugged. Security. Everything's getting hacked these days. I'm trying to see if we have enough for the student loan payment, I told him. It's due in 3 days, John. He shifted his weight, his sneakers scuffing the hardwood. It's fine, Heather. We're fine. I've got it handled. Just stop stressing. You're overthinking everything. He didn't give me the new password. Instead, he walked into the bathroom and started the shower. The laptop fan hummed while I sat in the home office. My focus remained on the federal payment, not a detective game. At 41, the house taxes already consumed the budget, and now my husband locked me out of the money. Perhaps he had a budget fix planned. He always enjoyed being the solution. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was the family updates. Score, text with Sarah and the rest of the Dunn cousins. Usually, the thread contained only photos of grandkids and complaints about the New Jersey humidity. Sarah texted, "Yeah, just checking in. Some of us have been worried about the general stress levels lately. Let's all just be supportive." I stared at the phrase general stress levels. The Dunn family used that as drinking too much became going through a phase, and cheating became general stress. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed a response, then I deleted it. Being the stressed one in Sarah's eyes wasn't an option. Waiting for the shower to turn off, I timed John's routine. 10 minutes for drying and emails usually passed before he emerged. Ignoring the savings account, I opened the shared email on the laptop. I searched for student loan to find the automatic payment confirmations. I found the notification from the loan servicer. 2 weeks ago, John had updated the payment method. He shifted the withdrawals from our joint savings to an account ending in 4402. I had never seen that number in my life. Leaning back in the chair, I felt my heart thump. I searched the email for 4402, finding nothing. Then I typed Sterling. I found one email from a month ago, an automated notice of disbursement for a vehicle registration fee. Though the amount was small, the account name read Sterling Holdings. Management account. The DMV clerk had mentioned Sterling Holdings paid the registration 3 weeks ago. I closed the laptop just as John walked into the room. He smelled like soap. He didn't ask what I was doing. He just went to the dresser for his watch. Did you move the loan payment to a different account? I asked. He froze for a second, then slowly turned around. He looked tired and rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. I'm just optimizing the funds, Heather. I'm trying to move things around so we aren't hitting the savings as hard. I'm handling it. Which account? It's a temporary holding account, he said. Why can't you just trust me for once? I'm doing this for us. I trust you, I said, avoiding his eyes. I just want to know where the money is. He sighed loudly and walked toward the door. I'll show you the statements on Sunday. I'm late for my call. Just let it go for today, okay? He left the room without looking back. Staring at the closed laptop, I considered Joshua. My mother-in-law claimed he was in Texas, but the facts didn't align. A silver sedan had a registration at our New Jersey address, paid for by Sterling Holdings. Opening the text chain again. I scrolled through the last few months. Sarah had stopped tagging John in her usual memes and hadn't mentioned his name in 3 weeks. I looked at the student loan notice on the mail pile. 3 days remained, with no password and no idea where the money went. I watched my husband optimize our funds into a mystery account. Walking to the kitchen, I opened the junk drawer and found a folder of old utility bills. I flipped through them, searching for any mail for Joshua G. Jackson misdelivered by the post office. I found one, a forwarded envelope from a Manhattan law firm. The firm had addressed it to John, marking it confidential. Asset management. I left the envelope sealed, holding the heavy paper in my hand while the house stayed quiet. I left the envelope sealed on the counter, just staring at it, while the house stayed quiet. I stood there in the kitchen for a few minutes, listening to the refrigerator hum, and the sound of a neighbor's lawnmower outside. The paper felt too heavy for a standard letter. It had that thick, expensive weight that usually means you're either getting sued or inheriting a vineyard. Slipping my thumb under the flap, I tore it open. I found a formal notice from a Manhattan firm, printed in a font that looked like it belonged in a 19th century courtroom. It wasn't a lawsuit, but it was a notice of demand for repayment. The document referenced a promissory note tied to Sterling Holdings. According to the letter, $85,000. The exact amount my mother-in-law gave us for the down payment on this house 6 years ago was no longer a familial gift. The letter stated the grace period had expired. Now the full balance plus 7% interest was due within 30 days. My hands started to shake. I remember the day she gave us that money. We sat in her living room, and she patted my hand, telling me she wanted us to have a solid foundation. She called it a gift. John had beamed like he just won the lottery, while I just felt a vague sense of guilt for taking it. Scanning the fine print, I saw the managing agent, the Azure Room receipt, the silver sedan, the temporary holding account, ending in 4402. Everything started to click into a shape that made me feel cold. Sterling Holdings wasn't some random corporation. It was a shell for my mother-in-law's money, and Joshua was the one moving the pieces. The front door creaked open. I heard the thud of John's briefcase hitting the floor and the sound of him kicking off his shoes. I didn't move. I stayed leaned against the counter, the demand letter lying flat between the toaster and a bowl of fruit. John walked into the kitchen and stopped about 3 feet away from me. His eyes dropped to the paper. He didn't reach for it. He just stood there, shoulders slumping, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a single afternoon. When did that arrive? His voice sounded flat. He didn't look at me. He looked at the toaster. It was in the junk drawer, I said. Why is Joshua the managing agent for your mother's money? John sighed and rubbed his face with both hands. He stepped back and leaned against the island to avoid my gaze. It's not what it looks like, he said. Honestly, it was always a loan. My mom she didn't want to make it feel transactional at the time. A gift is not a transactional loan, and 7% interest? That's not a family favor. That's a predatory loan. He shifted his weight, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Joshua was just helping her organize the estate. He's got a knack for the paperwork. He was just managing the flow. The flow of what? The registration for a car we don't own? The money you moved out of our savings into an account I can't access? John's phone lit up with a notification. He didn't answer the call. He just stared at the screen. I was trying to fix it, Heather. I thought if I could move some things around, I could pay the interest without you noticing. I didn't want you to stress. Stress about it? I felt a sharp spike of irritation. The student loan payment is due in 3 days. We have a demand for $85,000. We are underwater, John. We are literally drowning in this house. I've got a plan, he said, breathless. I just need a few more weeks. Joshua is working on a restructuring deal. If we can just... What deal? I interrupted. Is the deal that you spend $200 on champagne while our house is being called in? John turned toward the fridge and opened it, staring blankly at the shelves. It was a business meeting, Heather. For the love of God, stop acting like I'm a criminal. I'm trying to save us. Save us from what? Your mother? He shut the fridge door with a dull thud. She's in a mood. She's reacting to things. She thinks we're not stable enough right now. That phrase, stable enough, sounded exactly like Sarah's general stress levels. It was the same coded language they all used to say something was catastrophically wrong without actually saying the words. I looked at the letter again. The demand was immediate. If we couldn't pay, the promissory note likely gave Sterling Holdings and my mother-in-law a claim against the equity of the house. I felt numb. I didn't throw the paper. Instead, I felt an urgent need to document everything. While John was still staring at the fridge, I stepped back toward the home office. I grabbed my phone and took photos of the letter, the Azure Room receipt, and the printouts of the email notifications regarding account 4402. What are you doing? John asked, appearing in the doorway. I'm making copies, I said. Why? Why would you need copies? We're handling it. You're handling it into a different account, I replied. My voice sounded distant to me. I moved to the desk and opened the laptop. I didn't try the password again. Instead, I opened a new browser window and searched for the property tax deadlines for our township. The bill was due in 2 weeks. That was another $4,000 we didn't have. The student loan payment was almost a footnote. The real problem was that the foundation of our life, the gift that let us buy this house, was actually a leash. And someone had just pulled it tight. John stepped closer, reaching for the laptop. Just give me the phone, Heather. Let's just talk about this like adults. I stepped back, clutching the phone to my chest. I didn't want to talk. Talking was what the Duns did. They talked in circles until the truth became a smudge of general stress. I walked past him and went into the hallway, locking myself in the guest bathroom. I sat on the edge of the tub and scrolled through the photos I'd just taken. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Hope you guys are doing okay. Mom mentioned things are getting a bit tense with the house stuff. Just remember, we're all a team. I stared at the screen, then looked at the photo of the demand letter. I didn't reply. I opened my email and started forwarding the photos to a private account I'd created years ago and hadn't used since college. Outside the door, I heard John pacing in the hallway. His footsteps sounded heavy on the hardwood. He didn't knock. He didn't try to open the door. He just stood there, breathing loudly, while the silence of the house pressed in on me. I sat on the edge of the tub with my back against the cold porcelain and listened to him. He stopped pacing for a second. I heard him lean his forehead against the door. That silence felt worse than the walking. I felt him waiting for me to just give in, to open the door and tell him it was fine, that he'd built our life on a lie. Heather, he said, his voice muffled. I mean, we can just talk. We don't have to do this in a bathroom. I didn't answer. I just stared at the photos of the demand letter on my screen. That $85,000 loan didn't just hit our bank account. It looked like a plan. If Sterling Holdings called in the loan and we couldn't pay, the house, this tiny, overpriced bungalow that took every cent we had to maintain, would go to them. It would belong to his mother and Joshua. I remember Sarah mentioning something months ago about a family restructuring back in the spring, but the dates on these documents didn't match her story. It made the whole timeline feel muddy. But I just assumed Sarah was confused about the months. I slipped my phone into my pocket and unlocked the door. John stood there looking haggard. He didn't look like the man I married. He looked like someone who had finally run out of energy to keep up a lie. I want you out, I said. He blinked and shifted his weight. Heather, where am I supposed to go? We have a mortgage. We have the taxes due in 2 weeks. Thinking about the $4,000 for the township weighed on me. We didn't have it. He had optimized the savings into account 4402, and my student loan payment restarted in 3 days. I tried to tell myself he probably just moved the money to get a better interest rate, but the math didn't add up. Figure it out, I replied. Go stay with your mother. Since you're so worried about her stability, maybe you can help her with hers. He let out a long, rattling sigh and walked toward the bedroom to pack. I followed him. I didn't want to be near him, but I needed to make sure he didn't take the laptop or any of the hard copies. While he threw shirts into a duffel bag, my phone buzzed. I looked down at the family updates chain. Sarah had posted a long paragraph. We're all very saddened by the current climate. The text read, it's unfortunate when a lack of trust creates this kind of environment. We really hope everyone can find a way to be mature about the transition. That word, transition, made me feel stupid. They weren't talking about marriage counseling. They were talking about the house. They didn't keep the other woman a secret from each other. She had family money that actually mattered to his mother. Joshua didn't work on a restructuring deal to save my marriage. He worked on a way to clear me out of the equity so John could start over with someone who brought a bigger check. Is that what this is? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. The transition? John stopped folding a sweater. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the open suitcase. Honestly. Things just changed, Heather. I tried to make it work. I really did. You spent $200 on champagne at the Azure Room while we're underwater, I said. He shrugged and finally looked up. His expression stayed blank. It was a business meeting. You don't understand the logistics of how Sterling Holdings works. I understand a demand letter for $85,000, I replied. He zipped the bag with a sharp, violent tug. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked past me, his shoulder brushing mine, and headed for the front door. When the door clicked shut, the house just felt too big and empty. The next few days involved a lot of logistics and a lot of coldness. The social fallout happened fast. Within 48 hours, they removed me from the family updates chat. I tried calling Sarah, but she didn't pick up. When she finally texted back, she kept it short. I think it's best if we all have some space while the legalities are sorted. Let's not make this more dramatic than it needs to be. I became the dramatic one because I found a predatory loan and a hidden account. By Friday, my student loan payment bounced. The notification popped up on my phone at 3 a.m. That red alert made my stomach churn. Sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, I stared at the property tax bill. $4,000. I had about $1,200 in my personal checking account, and that had to last me until the next pay cycle. I spent the weekend calling lawyers. Most of them told me the same thing. The promissory note bound me legally. Because I signed the closing papers 6 years ago, the debt tied me to the house, even though John told me it was a gift. My mother-in-law didn't actually want the money back. She wanted the leverage. She wanted the house, or she wanted me to leave quietly without fighting for the equity. The house felt different. I still cleaned the counters and took out the trash. I functioned, but I felt a constant, sharp annoyance in my throat. I stopped checking the family social media accounts. I stopped wondering why Joshua managed the flow of the money. 2 weeks later, a notification popped up while I sat on the couch. Sent me a Venmo request. The amount was $214.50. I stared at the request for a long time. He was gone, the house was a liability, and he was nickel and dimming me for the utilities. I clicked pay. Then immediately went into my settings and made my account private. I blocked his number and deleted the email address I'd used for the college account once the lawyer had the copies. I'm still in the bungalow for now. I'm working overtime at the office to cover the property taxes, so the township doesn't put a lien on the place before I can sell it. The lawyer says the divorce will get messy because of the Sterling Holdings entanglement. But I don't care about the mess. I just want the keys to a place where no one else's name is on the foundation. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your experience with us today. I honestly can't imagine the shock of discovering that the very home you thought was your sanctuary was actually a calculated trap. It is truly gut-wrenching to see how John and Joshua conspired to use family restructuring as a weapon to push her out of her own life. The level of betrayal from a husband and a cousin working in tandem to manipulate the finances is just staggering. Now, I want to hear from all of you. Heather is currently working overtime just to keep the township from putting a lien on the bungalow while she fights this legal battle. Given that the promissory note was signed under false pretenses and the gift was actually a predatory loan, do you think she can actually win the equity battle against Sterling Holdings? Or is the mother-in-law's legal trap too tight to break? Please leave your advice and your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know how you would handle this. If you found this story gripping, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life confessions. We'll see you in the next one.